where Jesus is walking and the woman wants to be healed, and she just thinks to herself, I know if I just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be healed. So she touches the garment, and Jesus says, who touched me? I felt my power go out from me. My question is, why would he ask that? What was the purpose of that question? If he really knew who that was, he knows who it was that touched him. Why did he ask that, and to whom was he asking the question?
That is a very good question, Darlene. I'm so glad you asked it. I love that story and of that woman making her way through the crowd. You can almost imagine what that would be like, and getting to Jesus. And then finally, just by faith, after 12 years of hemorrhaging, which would have left her out of the synagogue, left her unmarried or divorced if she was married. And so many implications came to a person that had this kind of issue. And Jesus was her only hope. And she reached forward and grabbed hold of him. Pastor Scott, what would you say to that? What do you suppose? Who was he talking to? Why did he say power has gone out from me, and who touched me?
Yeah, this is a very, very interesting, event that happens here, because back in the book of Malachi, it actually tells us concerning the Messiah that when he comes, he will come with healing in his wings. What is interesting, when it talks about the hem of the garment here, it most likely is talking about the hem or the fringes of the garment that the Jewish man would wear, which was called a talit, or his prayer shawl. And the hem of that garment were actually these fringes. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew word is zitzit, where the Lord told him to put a band of blue and to put these zitzits on the end of their garments. So what's interesting is those hems of those garments, those fringes, actually are knotted in such a way that they're knotted with 4 different knots that represent the name of God. So this woman, being a Jew, would have known exactly, to a Jewish person, being a Jew herself, she would know what that garment represented. And that garment was a connection to him, because this would have been something Jesus would have used in prayer. It was his prayer shawl. He would have covered his head, as Jewish men did in that day, to go into literally a closet to be alone with the Lord in prayer. So that garment represented Jesus' intimacy with his Father, his relationship with his Father. Now, what's interesting, at the end of that garment, the corner of that garment where those fringes were tied to, those corners were called the wings. And so it's interesting, because Malachi tells us when Messiah comes, he's going to come with healing in his wings. Well, she had some understanding of this, because that's what she says. If I can only touch the hem of his garment, if I can only grab his name, which represents his character, which represents what he's like, he's compassionate, he's merciful, and such. And she knew that because of Jesus' relationship with his Father, that Jesus has power. She knew there was something different about Jesus. And so she reaches out in faith, thinking, if I can just touch the end of his garment there, I'll be made whole. Because it spoke of him and his relationship with his Father and his own power. And what's interesting, I believe, John, when you look at the other accounts of this in the Gospels, because it's in a couple different places, whenever she touched his garment, and she said to herself, the Bible says, that if I do this, I know I'll be made well. Well, number one, the reason Jesus stops and notices this is because Jesus is God, and God always responds to people's act of faith. When a person from the depths of their heart puts all their faith in the Lord and responds by doing something to show their faith in God, let me say this, they're throwing all their eggs into one basket, so to speak. The Bible says this woman spent all of her money, trying to be healed by spending all of her money on physicians, trying to be healed. It didn't work. She only had one place to turn. So she was putting all the faith that she had sincerely from her heart in Jesus, and Jesus, knowing that, responds. And so that's why it says power or virtue went out of him. Jesus is saying here that he, because of the woman's faith, he had something inside of him that was responding to that. And I believe it's his compassion and his mercy. And as it says, his virtue, some say it's his power. And she was healed. And she was healed because she put her faith in Jesus. That's the main point there.